Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
As we didn't get a chance to introduce ourselves in the big room because there was just so many of us today, I'd say we can first do a round of check-ins. Just so if you want to go around, whoever wants to speak and speak next, and just say, I suppose, your name, maybe where you are, and maybe a short thing about why you're here today.
Do we know how
yes.
much time we have in this breakout room?
Yes, so we'll be here up until about 8. Well, I don't know where you are, but an hour, 20 minutes from now.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So I can start, I suppose. I'm Marta, originally from Portugal, but living in Ireland. And I'm part of XR Ireland. And I'm here today because I've got an interest in the principles. I've been part of guardianship here and just really thinking that the principles has been what was drawing me to XR in the first place. And I've been participating in empathy circles and sort of facilitating them as well. So that's why I'm here, I suppose. Yeah. Whoever wants to go next?
I'll go next. I'm James. I'm in New York in the US, and I've been working to build conflict, spaces to have constructive conflict and conversations across differences for a while now, and recently getting tapped into XR through the building culture of empathy, empathy cafes, and I know that having principles, clear principles and goals is key for any successful organization. So I'm not very familiar with the principles, and I'm interested to learn what they are.
Thank you, James.
I can go. I'm Amy. I am in London and was involved with a lot of actions, mostly a while ago, and I'm kind of I feel like I'm on the edges of Extinction Rebellion, and that's fine. And recently been doing a year-long project that's kind of through the regenerative culture stream and non-violent communication, coming together of regen and NVC groups, and I always wondered right from the beginning, like, why are we not talking about these principles all the time? Like, it's the one thing that kind of binds everything together, and we don't really talk about them, and I think it's essential. So I'm really happy that this is happening. Hi.
Thank you, Amy.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm in England, in the west, near Swindon. And I haven't been part of XR at all. I'm here tonight because April encouraged me to come and figure stuff out or find out. I was with Occupy London for the whole of the time that it was there at St. Paul's, and was involved in putting on meetings and breakout groups and everything, so learned a lot of these principles there, which are really useful. I'm also part of a small collective in the UK that looks after equipment, etc., for activist groups. We're a centralized hub. We're called Activist Tap Collection. So we look after stuff, so you know, so it doesn't get trashed as much as possible. And I see that as part of my commitment to trying to live life now how I want to in the future, rather than saying at some point in the future we'll be sustainable and, you know, look after our resources. And I'm not just a friend of April's, but I try to support her as much as I can. So anyway, that's why I'm here. A little bit scared, but you know, so what?
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, that's great. So I hope there's, you know, that the relaxation will settle in as we get going. So the way this works, you know, as I explained, is we take 5-minute turns, and I've got a timer, so I'll time it for us. And what I'll do is when so you don't need to worry about time, I'll do that for you, but I'll show you the timer once the 5 minutes are up, right? Just so you know. And so if you're halfway through your sentence, or through, you know, you're in the middle of your idea when I show this, or you're halfway through reflecting what someone else is saying, don't feel like you need to stop there and then. You know, it's just a sign to please wrap up whatever you're, you know, and then you'll have more time to speak later, basically, but still finish your idea. Right. So that's the practicalities of it. And then I just invite whoever wants to start can speak to me maybe, and then I can, you know, show you like the model, the whole reflecting bit. Yeah. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to
Yeah,
start.
go for it, James. I listen.
40 people. Wow. It's great. What a great turnout. These empathy circle events fluctuate, and this is the largest one that I've been to. There might have been some larger ones, but just this last week, I went to a number of very well-attended events. Some of them are frustrating because they don't really share the same philosophy around participation, more like didactic, and I kind of sometimes okay, but I prefer the ones that really are fostering this kind of interactive culture. And so glad to see this, and glad to see it being combined with what it is.
Yeah, I reflect that bit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So you're noticing that there's a lot of people here today, quite a lot more than, yeah, it seems like more than you'd expect. And you've been attending these events recently, and there's been a lot of people at them, but they don't always have a space for participation. Sometimes they intend to be a bit didactic, and that doesn't suit you as much. Did I get that?
That's right. Yeah. Went to a great philosophy club meeting that had 50 people, no breakout groups. So many people using Zoom for the first time. And going to other meetings that are held by professional facilitators, and they're using great technology. One technology combines with Zoom, so the breakout rooms can leave and go as you please, and the breakout rooms have names, and just so many interesting things happening now. And I want to be a part of helping that. I heard Ben mention that he was part of London Occupy and setting up meetings and stuff, and that resonates with me because I was part of Occupy as well in New York and in Canada, and I used a lot of NVC to help organize meetings and facilitate the really large meetings. Learned so much from doing that, and have learned a lot since then. Again, I don't have an active XR community where I am, but well, so that's part, why I do a lot of what I can online.
So you've been to a lot of these meetings recently, and you're adding that one of them was like this very big philosophy meeting, like 50 people there. And also there's all these meetings where people are trying new technologies and combining things with Zoom. And it sounds like it's exciting to you and quite creative. And yeah, and you were referring back to what Ben had said about being involved with Occupy in London and setting up meetings there. And because yourself have been involved with Occupy, then yeah, you found that interesting. And you were saying and telling us about setting up meetings where you'd facilitate using your NVC skills, using that to help people there.
Yes. Hearing some of that back, I'm feeling a little self-conscious, as though I'm being a little all over the map and maybe not on the topic of today, but I'll just finish by adding that we have a specific way of working with principles or goals in some of the work that I do, and I've been finding that to be extremely effective. So I'm looking forward to learning more about the principles.
So you're saying you get a bit self-conscious that that you might not be staying within the topic, and then you're saying that you work with principles and goals as well in other things you do, and you and you find that useful. That's helpful, and so you're curious to hear more about the share here.
Yes, that's thank you, Marta.
Oh, there you go. That's your time. Ben, will you listen to me, please?
So I haven't done this before, so I'm seeing by what you did that every now and again I reflect back to you what I've heard. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. And stop me if I get excited and I start sharing too much, right? Just stop me, because it should be, yeah. I'll try and stop often, but if I get excited and I don't,
Okay.
give me a sign.
Okay, and I might need some coaching as well, so I'll give it a go.
So yeah, thank you for being here. I get particularly excited when there's new people, because I find that's the role of XR, right? Is for us to meet people that we wouldn't otherwise be meeting. For me, it's one of the roles of XR, and I suppose it does. I hope it's a shared vision. Is this thing of reaching out to each other. I'll stop there.
So you're saying that you are excited to have new people come in because you feel that that's one of the important things for XR. And then you said something else and I've lost it.
I hope that's a shared vision, this thing about reaching out. Yeah, because ultimately it's what we have in common that we sometimes overlook. It's focusing on the shared vision, focusing on what we have in common seems really important right now.
So I hear you saying that having a shared vision is very important, and focusing on the shared vision is important because it's what we share.
Yeah, like people within XR are very different. If I think about my local group, like you have the whole spectrum, or well, I think you do. But then we all have families and we all worry about things. We all have basic human needs We all get sick. We all want to feel safe. And I think we all, in a way, care about each other. You know, yeah. I think well, I believe, anyway, it's more believing than thinking, that humans are inherently caring not just about themselves, and their own needs, and not just the needs of themselves, but that they care, that in the normal circumstances they care about each other.
So I hear you saying that XR has a very wide spectrum of range of people in it. You said that about your local group has that, but that we all have families that we care about, and we all care about each other. And you believe or think, I'm not sure which one, that all human beings care about other human beings as well.
Yeah, I have that thing. I think sometimes when we don't have our needs met, like if there's scarcity, whether that's food or whether that's love or whether that's, you know, if there's reasons for feeling scarcity and feeling threatened, or not having had someone else model it for us, you know, like in childhood or in life, really, then it gets difficult to feel and express that. But I think when we don't, you know, when we're not in scarcity, the natural thing for humans, I think, is to care about others.
So I hear you saying that we have these feelings of sharing, but when scarcity happens, that's not necessarily the first thing we think about, but that people have these feelings of one. Oh, I think you said something about when times are difficult, it's harder to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Ben. My time's up. I feel very heard. So it's just your turn to pick someone to be your listener. And maybe Amy's there.
James, would you listen?
Yeah, happy to listen. I'm listening.
So even though I've done a lot of things like this, Occupy had breakout groups, a little bit different than this, and anyway, even though I have a lot of experience about all that stuff, I'm feeling very scared at the moment, so quite shaky, but I know that's usually quite a good place for me to be, because that's where movement happens. So my connection with XR is that I kept away from it at first because I was very busy doing other stuff. And then I had an issue with regard to the relationship with the police. So I made a decision to keep out of the way. In other words, not to share negative information, but to I felt it was important that if somebody's doing something, even if I don't agree with it, my first response can be to step out of the way.
Let me see if I got you so far. So you're doing this. Doing this is not completely new. You've done it before in Occupy, and you've been in breakout groups. It's a little different, and so you feel nervous, but your sense is that it's a good place for you to be. That it's a place of learning when you feel that anxiety, maybe nervousness, and so then you said that you're in something's going on with the police where your sense is that when someone does something, even if you think it's not the right thing, you deal with it usually by keeping out of the way?
So what I was saying is that I had like an issue where I didn't agree initially when I came across XR with the XR's relationship with the police. And because I had that issue, rather than have conflict or speak negatively about XR on social media, I decided to like step to one side, you know, not to interfere, because, you know, I might be wrong.
So initially you felt the difference between the way you relate to the police and the way XR was relating to the police, and being that you stepped aside while being involved in XR. You didn't bring that opinion in, or you weren't involved. You didn't, I don't know, were there some police events and you didn't?
I didn't connect with XR in a formal way.
You didn't connect with XR in a formal way.
So what I have done a couple of times is for local XR events, I've joined a group that's cooked. So because I really like to be part of a group that feeds people, that provides food. Because one of the things I've noticed over many, many years of partaking and facilitating in various groups, that how food is cooked and presented has a huge effect on how the day or the weekend goes. So, yeah.
So the group that you were involved in, the groups that you tend to get involved in are the cooking groups, because you know that the way food is prepared and presented has a big impact on the success of the event.
Yeah, and it has it has an effect on how people are able to participate in the group. So just looking at the principles like shared vision, it's like, I think it's really important to have a shared vision. That was one of the difficulties that Occupy had, because we all came together and, you know, we had to try and bash out a shared vision. And I broadly like the visions that I've seen in XR. And so I'm kind of just feeling my way a little bit. So
Yeah, moving from Occupy to XR, you remember the challenges of getting to that shared vision. It was a struggle, and so you're appreciating the shared vision, the existence of the shared vision now, but you're still feeling it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Amy, would you listen to me? I noticed some discomfort in me as I realized that I don't know what the principles are, and I was waiting for someone to give them to me. And time out?
No, just technical. I'm just wondering, I noticed that you've spoken twice and I haven't spoken. Is that okay? Does that work within Marta? Within the format?
Now, yeah. So now James will speak to you, and you'll be after James. So Amy, now you're you're James's listener, so you'll reflect him back. Yeah.
I I'm okay with that. I can get them on my own, but I'm just noticing that I had this idea that somehow they would be given to me. I had an expectation that they would be given to me. And so absent my knowledge at this time, currently, I'm wanting to talk about a principle that's important to me, even though it's not part of XR. And that principle.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. You were anticipating that we'd have the principles, that you would have the principles given to you, and we don't. But there's a principle that's outside of XR that's very important to you that you're going to speak about.
Yeah, that principle is something I've already heard Marta share. I don't know if she said it was explicitly a principle of XR, but it's that joining on what we have in common, or at least trying to identify the points of similarity that we have in common, and going to connect on that rather than starting from a place of attacking the differences and attacking, intentionally creating or going for polarization and splintering.
So focusing and connecting around similarities rather than creating division and separation.
Yeah. And I think of it like a principle, because I know that when you do that, is when you join together on the similarities, the splintering happens inevitably. At some point, the unity of whatever group or ideology becomes so, it gets bigger and bigger and more uniform, that just naturally there's splintering, there's polarization takes into effect. But I have noticed that, at least in a lot of the groups and conversations I have, there's a tendency to go right for the splintering, and then we're all separate, and it creates different problems. So you don't have to reflect me back every sentence I say. I'm cool with just taking a pause sometime and just gathering my thoughts, but. Yeah, I heard that you mentioned you do NVC, and I know other people do NVC, and that there's a lot of needs language that gets mentioned, and I appreciate how that needs awareness also becomes a very good doorway into joining with people on our humanity, the things that are, that really do connect us, because at the level of being human and having needs, it is easier to find the commonality. And yeah, if you could reflect that last piece, and then I'm done. Thank you.
You said, I think I heard that as organizations get bigger, then there's a natural tendency for splintering to happen. And then the last part of that piece I wasn't quite clear on. And then after that, you spoke about how a needs awareness can be a useful way of, going back to what you were saying at the beginning, focusing on the commonalities and the shared pieces.
Yeah, you got the important part. Thank you.
So Amy, it's your turn to pick someone to speak to, and then you have 5 minutes.
I will pick you, Marta.
Go for it.
I think I'll start with What's Alive, which is really happy with the trees that I see from my spot that I sit on the floor. I get a tree out of each window, which is amazing, and really happy that there's people from different places and that my internet is working. It's barely been working at all since lockdown, so this is a treat. Yeah, and lots of like personal relation stuff in my head, thinking about family, and I guess the more connecting I do with people, largely through XR, but like just the deeper my relationships get with friends, the more my relationship with my family appears contrary to that, contrary to the depth.
Yeah, so you started off by appreciating, checking in with yourself, I suppose, and appreciating that you're sitting on the floor and the view you have trees from you where you're sitting, and really happy that your internet connection is working just now, which it hasn't necessarily been doing, and that there's this space with other people that you can connect with. And then you were also reflecting on how all this depth of your relationships with people within XR and you know, your friends, and it just doesn't seem to be that. With your family, seems to go the other way around in terms of depth.
Yeah, I am slightly wary or something about I guess I haven't experienced this level of reflection before, and I'm questioning where the line is between being heard and being kind of fully having everything spoken back to you in a lot of detail, and I'm open to learning about that. In terms of the first principle, which I think is what we're looking at, the shared vision of change, I've always really thought we don't have a shared vision of change, and we have a shared vision that we need to change, and at the same time an appreciation that we can all contribute by being ourselves and offering what we have to offer already, perhaps with a different focus and in a different way, but that's something that's been important to me to keep reminding myself of, because I have spent most of my life burning out and in other activist groups finding it hard to just hard to deal with everything. Like it's a lot for the emotions and information and yeah, so for me, this idea that we come as you are, kind of whatever you have to offer will be gratefully accepted and is needed and is you know, good enough, and that has been some source of comfort to me as I have found myself kind of swinging around, doing different things, doing something, having to stop, burning myself out again. Okay.
So first you were noting that yeah, that you've not been reflected with this much wording before, and so you're sort of wondering, yeah, whether that, you know, what's the line between feeling heard and the level of words or repetition of what you said. And then thinking about the principle for shared vision of change, you start by saying, well, you don't think we do, and that it's an important part actually that everyone is themselves and authentic and brings what they have to bring coming in to the movement. And you spoke to that being a good thing, but there also being some burnout that can come, and that you've experienced yourself as well with this and other groups. And I have a sense I missed something.
That's great.
Ben, will you listen to me, please?
Yeah.
So I want to go over the principles, see if I remember them, so James gets them to hear them. So we have a shared vision of change, would be the first, and then it's right. I won't remember them in order now. It's a shared vision of change. It's a non-violent movement, so non-violence would be another one. We mitigate for power. It's based on autonomy and decentralization. Do you want me to stop there, Ben? Maybe.
Yeah. So you're saying you want to go over the visions, and James will hear it from you, and that we have, you're saying that we have a shared vision of change, and that there's autonomy, and did you also say non-violence? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have missed something.
And that we actively mitigate for power, and that we need a regenerative culture. If you want to say those two.
Yeah, so you're saying that we actively mitigate for power and that we need a regenerative culture.
And then no blame, not blaming and shaming, so no blaming and shaming. And it's going to get tricky now. Can't remember the second one. God. I'll just wait a minute. We focus on what is necessary. So no blaming and no shaming. We focus on what is necessary. We live in a toxic culture. And we welcome everyone and every part of everyone. There's one missing.
So I hear you saying that you're trying to remember all the principles, and we live in a toxic culture, and there's no blaming and shaming, and something about doing what is necessary. I didn't. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I think it's something like we focus on what is necessary. Yeah, so that's to do with the 3.5%. Well, that was the way they were phrasing it at the beginning, right? It was the 3.5% of people that we need to mobilize to get critical mass to shift things around. but yeah, what is necessary might change over time, but it's, you know, it's we focus on what is necessary, so we leave our comfort to actually do what needs to be done, whatever we understand that is.
So what I heard additionally there is that we leave our comfort to do what's necessary.
Yeah. And I'm missing one, but I'm sure it'll come back later. And yeah, I find we don't spend enough time on the principles. When I was holding meetings, it would always be the first thing. Like, first you get to the meeting, you go over them again. And there's no getting bored, because like each person will interpret them differently. And it'll mean different things at different times and different contexts. But I also find them quite inspiring.
So I hear you saying that we don't spend enough time on going over principles, and that it used to be that every meeting started with it, and you don't get bored because we all have a different interpretation.
Thank you. I feel very heard, and that's my time. Thank you, Ben. So you just pick a listener, Ben, and then you have 5 minutes.
Okay, will you listen to me, Marta?
Yes, we have
to. So this is very new for me. I have a lot of feelings coming up. I read up on the first principle. I reminded myself, because I read every single XR document 3 months ago. I decided to stop being a negative Nelly and dig into all the documents very carefully. And essentially went, yes. That was my response to reading everything that I could find online. So I have kind of not been able to share my feelings of difficulty with regard to XR, because it felt too much like criticism, and like XR gets plenty of unwarranted criticism already. Okay, I'm just going to stop there for a moment.
So, yeah, in a way, this is quite emotional moment for you. It's a bit, things are happening, and it's, yeah, 3 months ago, you decided to, you know, it seems like you thought you were being very self-critical, so you decided to dive into XR materials, and so you read every bit and all of it, and you had, you know, what came to you is like a big yes to it. And then now you're thinking, well, I've had all these difficulties around XR, and actually I've not had a place or space or time to voice those. And so it seems like you might want to share around that now.
Yeah, thank you. I have a lot of friends who are in groups that our white Western culture and society has, shall we say, treated very badly, oppressed. And a lot of my focus in the last few years has been supporting people in those groups and trying to talk in the groups that I'm in about anti-colonial struggles and unpicking the part that we continue to play in that oppression. So I suddenly realized, oh, this feels like a safe place that I could say that.
Yeah, so you've you've been holding these things, and there doesn't seem to be really a place to take them. And yeah, you've got friends, you've got good friends in various groups that do work with minority groups, or with so you're very aware of the oppression systems that exist in Western societies. And so you've been trying to help their voices be heard in different platforms around time. And it seems like, yeah, you've been holding, because you've not been wanting to be critical. So you've been holding things.
Thank you.
Mm. It's not been. Amy, will you listen to me? Yeah. Yeah. I feel with Ben this thing of us, we just don't have spaces. There's not enough space being there for us to talk without consequence, almost. You know, to just to not be fearful of what's going on in our heads and in our hearts, and in spaces where we trust each other's intentions.
You feel there aren't enough spaces for speaking without consequence, and just saying whatever we want, whatever's in us. Yeah, without having to censor for fear of consequences.
Yeah, and that our intentions are trusted.
The
we
intentions.
we trust ourselves and each other to be doing the best we can, which might not be great, but it's the best we can, and that the intentions behind our intentions to contribute, our intentions to do good.
Mm-hmm. Spaces where our intentions to do good are kept in mind, and that we're doing our best, whatever that is.
Yeah. I think there's something like we can't really have real collaboration. Having a shared vision assumes that we are in a collaborative space. Having a shared vision is not, there's these people in that room, in that circle, that create a lovely vision, spread it out, and we all take on their banner. Right? Now, having a shared vision means we are all part of creating that vision.
So you're saying that in order to have a shared vision, there needs to be collaboration, which means everyone contributing to that vision. And I think you're saying that you don't think we have that.
Yeah, and it's not our fault. Like XR is actually quite good, right? But it's going back to, we live in a fear-based scarcity mindset society, and there's no escaping that. It's like our legacy. We're trying to change it, but that's, we'll be hopefully a bit better than our parents, and future generations will hopefully be a bit better. But like, this is what we've, it's no miracles.
You're saying that it's not our fault that we don't have this, and part of the reason is that we live in a fear-based and scarcity mindset society.
Yeah.
And this will improve, hopefully.
Hopefully. But for me, unless we get politicians to do empathy cycles, because they're the role model for scarcity and fear-based, right? If we're afraid as XR or as a group or whatever, if we're afraid of criticism, like look at politicians, right? They don't engage with it. They numb to it. It's like, oh, I don't care what people say, and it's this. Yeah, empathy cycles to the front. That's my motto.
Yeah, you want to see politicians doing empathy circles, and there's a connection with engaging with criticism, and listening to one another. There was another piece in there. What was the other bit?
Yeah, I think that was it. That's not our fault. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Amy. It's your turn.
Thank you. So now I pick someone. What's happening? Yeah. James, I'll pick you.
Listening.
Feeling a little bit blank. I think that's sometimes a way, if I'm listening to the contents of a lot of people's heads, it can be a lot. I feel quite used to criticizing XR or being in spaces, or perhaps I just read a lot of criticism of XR. That's probably the main space that I'm in. But I don't talk about it that much, and I also have a lot of insecurity and fear about my ability to talk and to have conversations, especially with people who are intellectual and can argue. Yeah, I feel like listening is, and this kind of space is what I can operate in. The intellectual ideas, conversation, debating, I can't do.
Yeah, so Amy, I heard you say that listening to people in their heads left you feeling a little blank or disengaged, and that you are anxious being in spaces where people are debating, and that it's more comfortable. I think that's what you said, is more comfortable to be in a space like this, that's where people are listening and offering listening, that's something that you do feel good doing, comfortable doing.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say it's disengaged. I think it's more that I'm engaged in what's going on. Therefore, I'm not. I'm not kind of with myself as much.
So it's not that it's not being disengaged. It's being focused on what other people are saying. So you're not focused on yourself.
Which is a good thing. Just going to put my phone on silent. I found the biggest part of Extinction Rebellion for me, and some of this is to do with my circumstances and timings, but the personal relationships, and I don't know, it's confusing to me about how to work with people. I think I would like a regular group of people to work with that are focusing on questions like, what is the shared vision of change? Or going through, doing what we're doing now, going through principles. I guess what I'm thinking is I can't do this kind of computer document-based meeting way of working, but yeah, so I guess I'm grateful that this space exists, because this is the kind of engagement that I'm able to do at the moment.
Let me see if I got that. So you're mentioning in XR, you sometimes get confused about best ways to work with people, and that you want to be in a group that is working consistently over time to ask questions like, what is the shared vision? And so you feel grateful that there's, that you're here and we're doing something like that.
Yeah, thank you, James.
You're welcome. Marta, would you listen to me?
Yes, I will.
Thanks. So something that Ben, that you said that resonated for me was the desire to have spaces where I can talk freely. I don't know if this is just my imagination, but I feel like when you said that, you kind of like, you like crunch your shoulders as if you're like looking over your shoulder, who heard you criticize XR or something. And I just, it resonates with me a lot that so many of the spaces, activist spaces that I've been in, there is so, the emotional tension is so high. You can always just cut it with a knife, and then one wrong word and it's broken relationships and disaster. And so it also resonates with what Marta, what you said about, wanting spaces. And so this is a theme for me. Space is a theme for me, where the difference, the translation or the reframing that works for me is that where I don't want someone to give me space, but I want to create space. And I want to create space outside of myself in the sense of organizing spaces that I'm responsible for creating the space. I've created the invitation. I've set something up because I know what I want and how what I see is needed. So I'm doing something proactively. But even more than that, I am creating space inside of myself. Like especially even in these places, like where we're talking and we're cordoning off the time. Like I have my 5 minutes, that 5 minutes is safe. Still find it useful to think about how the real space that I want is not in time, it's more inside of myself, that when I'm emotionally charged, when I'm uncomfortable, when there's something that I don't like, inside of me, emotionally, it feels like there's no space. And then when that's true, doesn't matter if I have 3 hours, I don't ever have a sense of like, space, spacious. And so I've just found it useful, that reframing, has helped me with my goal. So it's not that I need to get more time, but that there's something that I can do, expanding my ability to be with my own discomfort, that gives me a sensation of having space. And then people not give me a chance to talk, and I've still achieved my goal. I'm there and I'm present, and there's a spaciousness inside of me. I'm not a victim of someone not giving me space. So this word space is always, it comes up a lot, but this reframing is new for me. It's kind of a new discovery, and it's a relief to kind of be here with it.
So when you heard Ben share of his experiences, you identified with that, with having, with being, and you noticed as well, you saw him physically, you had the impression that he was shrugging a bit, making himself smaller in response to not being, his speaking not being welcomed. And then you spoke of how important that is for you in this word space, and how there's some learning that you've been having of how you can take responsibility for creating that space outside of yourself, and create circumstances where you do have that space. But at the same time, almost more important even, is creating that space within yourself and knowing it's there, and that you've got, that you can resort to it whenever you want, independently of what's happening around.
Yeah, and I just want to be heard specifically that the way that I create the space inside of myself is by making space for my feelings.
Yeah, so you'd really like specifically for it to be named, that it's having the space inside that you create for your own feelings that is important.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you, Marta.
Thank you. Ben, will you listen to me, please?
Sure.
Yeah. I was interested in this thing that Amy was sharing about there being things that we are drawn to and that are easy for us and that we're really good at, and that they might be a contribution of our own, and then there being things that are not as easy and that might be more challenging. And so how do we navigate? How do I find my function or my purpose within places, including XR, where I can contribute and feel satisfied by that?
So I hear you saying that you're referring to what Amy said about there's things or ways that we feel comfortable with and we're drawn to doing those. I think contributing in those ways, but there's also other things that might be useful where we're not so comfortable. I'm not sure if I really heard that correctly.
It's that there's spaces in XR, like in any other place, where we're expected to be and behave in a certain way, and we're expected to have this certain set of skills, and we're, like report reading and minute producing and making arguments, and there's a certain kind of thinking and expression and skill that is valued more in certain contexts than other sets of skills.
Okay, I think I heard what you said, that there are places like in XR where certain skills are valued, and you mentioned report reading or making arguments. And I'm not sure, it looked like you're saying that maybe you're not comfortable with that necessarily.
Yeah, it doesn't seem the most useful way to go around it. As in, there's no reason I can't have a visioning discussion that involves singing. Like, who decided? Right? Just because we've been doing this thing for 30 years in this way in a society that is made to pump out money, and I don't need to go over all the things that this society does. Just because that's the way it's been doesn't mean that's good, and it just undervalues and underuses the potential in real people.
So I hear you're saying that just because society around us has done something in a particular way for a long time, or that an organization like XR has decided to do certain things, and you're saying, why can't you express your response to a shared vision of change through song? And that there are other ways of people expressing themselves. And then you said something at the end, and I didn't actually hear, I couldn't understand the words you used, so I might have missed something important.
I think it's like a good example is the whole extrovert thing. Like, I'm extroverted, right? If I want to feel heard, I'll get heard. But that's just ridiculous. That's not the way we should be setting XR up. I think it's just, we want everyone's voices to be heard. So what do we need to learn and do so that that happens?
So I hear you saying that, for example, you're extrovert, so if you need to be heard, you'll make yourself heard. And you're expressing some issues about, within XR, is like, how do we make it so that everybody gets heard, as opposed to just those people who make sure they get heard?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben.
So, okay, so basically, when you've listened, then you pick somebody to listen to you. Okay, I've got it. I like to know what the rules are, Okay, Amy, will you listen to me?
Yeah.
Okay, so So I actually have the shared vision of change up on my screen to the left. And so what I want to say is that that's in my mind. Everything I say is a response to that idea and document. Okay, so it might sound like I don't need to say that next thing, but anyway, just so you know, I have that in my mind, and this is my response to that shared vision of change. So in the past, I've very much been somebody that's felt like I have to act really big. You know, I have to help to change the world in very large ways, you know, like, you know, doing a fucking crazy thing like camping on the streets of London, St. Paul's for 5.5 months, you know, to bring capitalism down and you know, put on massive meetings and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of my natural, where I come from, the kind of the corporate world, figuring things out, having agreed principles, how we're going to run a meeting, etc. And I've now, fast forward, come to a much more thinking of like, what's really important for me is the micro stuff. I'm just going to stop there for a moment.
So you've got the principle of shared vision on your screen, and what you're saying is a response to that. You spoke of a document as well. You have in the past felt that you needed to do big things to change the world, kind of extreme circumstances like camping at Occupy, and there's an input of a kind of corporate mindset of getting things done and working out how to hold meetings and have some kind of system with that, perhaps. And now you have come to a different viewpoint, which is that it's the micro things. What was the word you used? Micro.
I think I just said micro, actually. I think you got it.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, for me, very much, it's like being authentic as much as I can at all times. Like, it's the conversations I have with my next door neighbor over the garden wall. And that I suddenly resonated with what James was saying about that's like holding a space. A conversation with neighbors is holding, do that conversation the way I want the world to be in the future when we have it all fixed. So just fix that bit of it now. And so what I talk about when I say like small things, I don't think they're small. I think they're really big. I think the way the four of us are in this little group, being open with each other, this is how the world changes. And it feels to me like I don't want to do this so that the world will change. I want to do this because this is how to do it. And that's kind of really my response to the shared vision of change. It's I can pick the words apart if I want to, or this is where I agree, this is where I disagree, but I think it's down to and it's not simple. What we're doing right here in this room, it feels like we're in a room together, is not simple. It's like very simple, and yet the way the world has trained us to be has made it very hard.
So for you, these small things are a way of enacting in the present the world that we want to see. And you gave the example of the importance of the authenticity of the way that you speak with your neighbour over the fence. And that what we're doing here is a kind of embodiment or acting this shared vision and bringing it into existence. And it might seem like a small thing, but it's not. And this is how things change, because this is change. Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy, just to let you know that you can go and choose someone, but you might not have full 5 minutes. I don't know when they'll call us in.
Ben. Okay. When you mentioned about the neighbour thing, Ben, I had an interaction earlier with my neighbours, and I literally, they're like next door neighbours, but one or two, but I just kind of hid from them. And then I'm also trying to hide for some other ones. And it's slightly a reflection, I think, or I'm telling myself that I don't want to be in London, and I don't want to, part of me doesn't want to interact with people that I know should have very different values from me. And I need, and what I want to do is place myself in a situation where I do want to talk to my neighbours. And it hurts me that I am so reluctant to, and it also kind of reminds me of my upbringing and this probably normal thing of not knowing your neighbours and not speaking to them, or not normal but common. I'll pause.
So I hear you saying the talk of neighbours sparked off with you, that you've been noticing that you've avoiding your neighbours, and you would like to be in a situation where you, I'm not sure if you said more like-minded neighbours or people you could have, more connection with. And I think you also said something about being brought up that way, of not talking to neighbours.
Yeah, and it's something about the values. I mean, I'm assuming what their values are, but yeah, I guess now I'm feeling a bit kind of insecure and triggered around some of the things that I assume my neighbours to think or value, that tap into my concerns around the way society works and what the future is. And yeah, and I guess wishing that I could talk about these things with strangers. And then again, this taps into another, I guess, sorrow that having really difficult conversations that aren't either held or done in a kind of with shared I don't know, that there's a danger to me. I feel I guess I feel scared to speak truthfully to a lot of people, and that includes some people that I'm close to.
So I hear you saying that you might be making some assumptions about what neighbors or friends, where they're at, what they think, and that you have felt triggered by their beliefs, yes, and that you're wanting, I think it's the wanting, or a safer place to be able to have conversations with people to find out where they're at.
Shall I just keep?
The message says turn to main session.
Yeah. Oh. So we've lost Amy.
Yeah. Nice meeting you, Ben.
And great
lovely meeting you. Yeah. And lovely seeing you, James. I didn't expect this. Don't know what.
Yeah, it's a nice interest.
An
I
extra.
thought, oh, maybe Edwin put you.
He doesn't know we met, by the way. You know, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like, it's not because of that. So anyway.
I'm just
lovely meeting
susceptible
you,
to
Ben.
paranoia.
You again, Ben.